Baisei, we're back. Rishus the Rish Kailal, Chashva Kailal. Let's get started. Back, some interesting shaylas, interesting sugya. Halachos of Beer. The Halachos of Beer. We'll see. Beer. We're gonna go through many sugyas, many ideas. We're gonna have some fun here. Okay. So there's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, which says, Laman Aleph Beis Itmar. Mifnei ma asru shecher shel oived chavim. Why did they aser the beer of goyim? Rami bar Chama Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Mishum Chasanis. The reason is Chasanis, to prevent intermarriage. You drink beer with a guy, you never know where it leads. By the time you're done, there's intermarriage. So therefore, we aser beer with goyim. Rab Nachman Amar Mishum Giloi. And Rab Nachman says the issue is Giloi. We have different sugyas of leaving things uncovered, water, etc., beer. Just like the snakes like to drink some water, leave a shtickle venom in. So I guess the snakes also want to have a shtickle beer, and they'll leave some venom in, and that will be a problem. The goyim are makbid on this apparently. So therefore, we're going to have some. We're going to ask Mishum Giloi. That is the shita of Rab Nachman. So the Maisa, is there a nafkamina if we're going to answer the beer of goyim for chasanos or for giloi? So there's going to be a nafkamina because we know when it comes to giloi, in places where there's no snakes, the Maisa we're makel with giloi. It happens that yes, there's a gra who's machmir, but the Shulchan Aruch, simply speaking, is makel by giloi in places where there are no snakes. So therefore, this isser will not be applicable. But if the issue is chasanos, intermarriage is very applicable nowadays, unfortunately, and therefore the isser would 100% apply. Okay, now this Gemara is very strange for two reasons. The first reason is, why did we ask her? And Tosfos even asked her. When did we ask her this? We have Mishnayos and Avodah Zarah that discuss there's the Isser Derabanan that they were goyzer of Pas Akam. There's Bishul Akam. There's Cholav Akam. There's Stam Yain and Yain Netzach. There is even Shemen Akam. We'll see that didn't actually last. Nowhere does it say an Isser of Shecher Akam. It doesn't exist. There is no Mishnah. There's no Mishnah. In fact, there's no Brisa. How does the Gemara start? If Neima Asu. Who said they asered? So the Tosfos says, I guess it must be a gezerah derabanan. Okay, so that was the first thing that's strange. The second thing that's strange about the isser is,
I thought the question is, where do we see the gezerah derabanan? Yeah, what kind of answer is that?
No.
The question is, we don't see a gezerah. The answer is there's a gezerah.
The question is, what's the makar? And answer is, it must be it's a gezerah derabanan that the Amoraim knew about. That most of the time, the question was based on the premise that the style is the style that's usually used to discuss a gezerah from the Tanoim, Mizban Tanoim. Answer with a doichik answer, I guess it must be a gezerah from the Zman of the Amoraim, which is less common and doesn't fit into the style so much. But Tosfos, we have no other choice really to explain this because we don't have any Mishnah or any Brisa that discusses such a gezerah. Okay, the second thing that's weird is on Laman Aleph Beis. Laman Aleph Beis Avodah Zarah. The Divrei Maskim of Neima Asru. Yeah? Fine. Yeah, I know you guys did it in Daf Yomi not so long ago. Don't worry, I was thinking about you guys. So, the Maisa, the other thing that's strange is, what are you talking about? We do have beer of goyim. We drink beer of goyim all the time. So what exactly are we talking about? Yeah, we're drinking beer of goyim right here, l'chvayda shiur. So what's going on? Okay, so that is our kashas. Now, to answer the question for a second of what's going on, why wasn't it around Bizman Tanoim, and it is around Bizman Amoraim? So I saw two explanations. I saw an explanation in the Ran. The Ran says the original gezerah was only made on things like bishul and pas, which we're worried that that's going to lead to chasanas, intermarriage, because who makes the bread? Who makes the food? It's the women. The women are the ones who are hanging out in the kitchen, making the bread and making the cooking. And therefore, it's one step to the women. We're asked for that because of intermarriage. Chasnas. But when it comes to beer, making beer is a man's job, and it always was a man's job to make the beer. Therefore, to connect you to a woman, that's 2 steps removed. You have to get connected to the guy, and then after you get connected to the guy, you have to get connected to the Goyish woman. That's 2 steps removed, and Bisman Mishnah, they didn't decide to answer things that were 2 steps removed. Came along the Moraim, I guess you read the Darish or something like that, and they came and they made the Isser even 2 steps removed and to include beer. But we're going to see soon we're much more makel by beer than we are by bishul and by pas, and that makes sense because once again, if it's 2 steps removed, there's less reason to be machmer, and therefore we're going to be more makel. The other answer that I saw was in the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan explains that apparently in Eretz Yisrael, beer was not chashiv. In Bavel, and when it was the Mishnah is pretty much written up, in Eretz Yisrael. So in Eretz Yisrael, when the Mishnah was written, beer wasn't chashiv. There was no reason to be geyser. You're only geyser on chashiv of things. In Bavel, beer was chashiv. And therefore, Bisman Gemara, when they were geyser in Bavel, this Isser of Shecher Sha'akim, and that's why we only see the Isser in Bisman HaGemara. So that's how the Aruch HaShulchan explains. Fine. Now the Maisa. Do we hold to this? I mean, not every story not every line of the Gemara makes it halachos. So let's see this, because most people, you ask around, everybody ever heard of Shecher Shalakim? I think the high majority, maybe in this Chashav Koil, the Oilam knows, maybe the Chashav Rosh Koil, but the Maisa, the Olam, the world doesn't know. You go to a random shul, and I'm not going to say where, anywhere, and you go and you ask around, nobody ever heard of Sheikh Akum. So it's probably not in the Shulchan Aruch, right? Let's open it up. Yeridea Kuf Yudalid. Kol Sheikher Shel Goyim, Echad Sheikher Shel Tamarim, Shel Ta'enim, or Shel Sa'oirin, or Shel Tavua, or Shel Dvas, Aser Mishum Chasanis. Yeah, so it starts off the Mechaber. We'll see there's going to be a Ramah coming up. But the Mechaber says any type of beer, it doesn't make a difference whether it's date beer, or fig beer, or honey beer, or tfua beer, I guess it's wheat beer, or barley beer, which is what our beer is. It's all Aser Mishum Chasanis. You see they're choosing the Chasanis. So that seems pretty tough. So it made it. But there's a caveat. It doesn't say no matter what it's Aser. It says ve'enoi aser el b'makam mechirasai. It's only aser. I'll explain actually. Before I do that, I want to quote another Gemara. The Gemara goes on. Next couple lines in the Gemara. Actually, I'm skipping a couple lines, but the Gemara goes on. Rav Papa mafkikin le labava de chanusa v'shasi. Rav Papa, he would take the beer out of the store. He would go on the doorstep outside of the store, and he would drink the beer on the doorstep on the outside of the store. That's where he would drink the beer. Comes Rabbi Chai, and Rabbi Chai, he would go and he'd take it from the store, he'd bring it to his house, and he would drink the beer at his house. And that's what he would do with the beer. And the Gemara explains they both did it mishum chasanos, but Rabbi Chai was more machmer. He didn't just do it right outside the store, he would actually go and bring it home. So the question is pretty obvious over here. What's going on? Papa Rabbi Choy, didn't you see a couple lines earlier in the Gemara where it said the Sheikher Sha'akum is Aser? How are they getting Sheikher Sha'akum and drinking it? So, I mean, it's based on some Rishonim, but... Huh? That's the implication. The question was, is it normal to drink it in the store? The implication of the Gemara is they did something unique by taking it out of the store. So it seems to imply that the normal thing was to drink it in the store. So in a bar, yeah, that seems to be. So Lamaisa, I'm not saying this isn't. I'm cutting through some Rishonim. We're skipping, doing a little kvitzas haderech, and we're getting to the Shulchan Aruch. So at the Shulchan Aruch, ve'ena aser el b'makom mechirasai. It's only aser in the place that you sell it. Im hevi asecher lebeisa v'shoyse sham mutter sheikar gezeira Hashem yisad etzloi. Right? The problem is you're going to go and eat together. You're going to go and drink together with the goyim. So if you go and you take it home, there's no problem. So this is showing how Rav Papa wasn't arguing in the previous Gemara. Rav Papa was fitting into the Gemara. The Isser of Sheikh Sha'akum is only in the place where they sell it. But if you go and you bring it home, seemingly like Rabbi Choy, not like Rav Papa, so if you go and you bring it home, then there would be no Isser of Sheikh Sha'akum. And it seems to be, and as the Shulchan Aruch goes on to say, and it's only also if you're conveyor yourself to drink there, and you do it in like a non-arai fashion. You're conveyor yourself and you do it as a kavua dika thing, as a regular type of thing, only then it's asr. We'll clarify what that means soon. Fine. Now, also, by the way, it's pointed out over here, I didn't read it inside, but if you're sleeping there, if you're at a hotel and you're sleeping there and you want to drink a beer there, that is allowed. Why is that allowed? That is a din beisai. Beisai doesn't need to be a dress that you own. If it's some place that you have sheikhs to, if it's some place that's your place even temporarily, that's considered beisai, and you would be allowed to drink there, drink in the hotel. So we'll see where in the hotel. I'm going to get into specifics where you could definitely drink in your hotel room. That is without a doubt. We'll see where in the hotel. We're going to get back to there. Okay, I just want to point out the Ramah, because this is so far seemingly the din of the Mechaber. The Ramah comes and argues, and the Ramah says, let's quote it, V'yesh matirim b'shecher shel dvash utvua v'chein nakal hakal b'medina zeilu. Zok the Ramah for the Ashkenazim, that Isser, that's by dates and figs, which apparently the Gemara was talking about date beer and fig beer. Apparently that's the standard beers of the Gemara. But honey beer and tfua beer, that is allowed. Well, what's a barley beer? So the Taz and the Darchei Tshuva, I believe, explain that, and the Piskei Tshuva, explain that that when you say tfua, when the Ramah says tfua is allowed, it means barley as well. It means wheat and barley in that tfua being allowed, because tfua is really a more of a general term that really could sometimes include barley, and that's included. Now, our beer, by the way, is barley beer primarily. You could get nowadays with all the craft beer stuff. There's some wheat beers out there also, but standard beer is barley beer. So the gezerah of the Gemara was said on the type of beer that they had Bisman Gemara. What type of beer did they have Bisman Gemara? They drink date beer and fig beer. And this gezerah is that the Ramah would only apply to date beer and fig beer. So as Ashkenazim, we're doing pretty well. I did a little research to find out with date beer and fig beer. There are some of these craft beers that do make date beers and fig beers to go Kiyimei how they used to have they know that they used to once upon a time drink date beer and fig beer, so they've tried to bring it back. There are some of these craft beers that have done that, but by and large, anything that's done on mass scale, it's all barley beer. Maybe you could find a little bit wheat beer, but that's about it. And therefore, seemingly this gezerah does not apply for Ashkenazim.
The reason for the gezerah, there shouldn't be room to make the chiluk. The reason was chasnas, so they drank fig beer, now they're drinking wheat beer. I'm saying it's the same chashash.
Okay, so the question is that surely we should have the Isser anyways, like the Mechaber says, with all beers. Why limit it to the beer that was made in the gezerah? So the idea is we don't make new gezerahs nowadays. So the question is, how do we interpret the gezerah was made? Now, if you want to say that, spirit of the law, maybe we shouldn't have barley beer as well, regular beer with goyim as well, as a spirit of the law concept, so we could suggest that perhaps. But I want to know what the halacha is, and we could talk about chumras in a minute. But I want to know what's the halacha. So what was the real question is, what was the nature of the takana? Was the nature of the takana a general takana covering all beers, or was the nature of the takana only covering that beer? Now, if we want to go and include something else, I'm not here to make up chumras and make new gezerahs. If you want to say spirit of the law, spirit of the takana, that's what to talk about, but I don't make new takanas. Fine. So the Shulchan Aruch says that you need to bring for Sfardim as of now. We'll see, maybe Ashkenazim are going to kick in. You have to bring the beer home, right? Let me ask you a question. Could you buy a beer at the Makolet, at the convenience store, and bring it to the park? And have a beer at the park with a Rajba? Yeah, could you do that? So the Kaf HaChaim, the Pri Chodesh, and the Darkei Tshuva, they all explain that you don't need a mamish bring it home. So what's the var? Because once you bring it to the park, it totally lost connection to the goyim. It's just this is your beer that's yours, and you bring it to your place. No longer there's any connection. The idea is you can't have it within the vicinity of the place that you bought it. So let's say you bought it at the store, or the bar, or whatever it is, and there's a park bench right outside. And anybody that sees you drinking it is going to chop. That beer obviously came from that store because it's in the vicinity. So that would be in the Machlokes or Papa Rabachoi, and we're machmer that you don't have it in the vicinity of the place where they sell it. But once you're in a separate location where it's no longer connected to the place that it was sold, that's good enough. It doesn't need mamish be in your house. Okay, the Kafa explains that you need it to the allowance that we said of shlei kvias of without kvias, without being set there, and derech harai, you need both of them. So, meaning if you once in a while, it's not a common thing, you're going to get a beer from this place in a non-common way, and you're not sitting down to drink a beer. You drink it standing up in the place. Right? You're not sitting down. I'm not getting involved with you should drink standing or whatever. But I'm saying you're not sitting down to have a beer in the place. You're thirsty. You go and you gulp down a beer. Or you drink a beer standing. And it's not a common thing that you get it there all the time. So even for Svardim, that would be allowed. Could I have a beer by my Goyish neighbor's house? I didn't buy it. Could I have a guy there? So the place can say, I am not allowed to go to my Goyish neighbor Bikfias, commonly, and make it a common thing. Every Sunday by the football game, I go sit down with my neighbor and we have a beer together. That is a problem.
Even according to the Ramah?
No. Not according to the Ramah. I'm talking about according to the Mechaber. This is according to the Mechaber. That would be a problem. And we're going to see there's going to be some Ashkenazi poskim that are machmer for this as well coming up. But as of now, the Mechaber, that would be a problem. But if I bring the beer, even if it's in the guy's house, but I'm the one who brings the beer, it's my beer, then this gezerah wouldn't apply. I'm not saying this is the best thing for every Yiddish boy to do. But the Maisa, we can't have the gezerah or sha'akum if it's my beer. If it's my beer, the gezerah is not chal. So if he brings the beer, it's a problem. If you bring the beer, it is not a problem. The Isser will not apply. Is there any heter mishum eva? The guy wants me to come over, my neighbor, my coworker, my boss, my this, whatever it is. Is there a heter mishum eva? So zak the shach, mishum eva, it's allowed. Zak the taz, what? Mishum eva, it's allowed? That's the whole point. We want the eva. We're not looking for you guys to be good friends. So he'll hate you because you didn't have a beer with him. Good. You won't marry his daughter. That's what the taz asks in the shach. The Meister, Moshe Feinstein, goes and explains the Taz. He says the whole idea of drinking Mishum Eva, that whole concept, it makes it not derech kvias. Now, I think this really depends on the story. Meaning, if your feeling is, great, I have to have a beer with this guy, all right, I'll do it to keep the peace. So that's a matzav of not derech kvias. But if it's like, okay, guys, beer with coworkers, yeah, guys, what's up? Awesome, yeah. I would not be getting fights in the office, you know what I mean? Who's playing today? Then that I don't think you have the heter of Moshe that's not kvias because you're drinking derech. I think it depends on the matzav, on your actual emotional feelings at the time. That's what I would say. Because Moshe does go with this taz. Okay. Now, let's talk about, once again, within the Sfardim, and we'll see the Ashkenazim might apply soon. We said in the hotel is fine. So we're at the hotel. I'm going to make 3 categories of the hotel. Right? I'm not saying we're never going to run into some gray areas. We will run into some gray areas. But let's talk about 3 categories of the hotel. Drinking in my hotel room is for sure Beisai. That's my house for the night. And therefore, that would be allowed. Right? No problem. Next category, sitting at the bar, on the bar stool, with the bar ledge in front of me. It's in the hotel building. That I don't think you could say that's Beisai. There, I'm drinking in the bar over the hotel. What about in the lobby? So I think in most cases, once again, it might depend on the establishment. In most cases, I think that is okay. I go to the corner where there's a bar. I get a beer. And then I walk 100 feet over and find a chair to sit down in the lobby. I'm not drinking it in the Makom Mechira site, even though maybe it's 100 feet away, even though you could see it. But I'm not drinking the beer in the Makom Mechira site. I bought the beer in the corner by the bar, and I'm sitting down over there by the lobby. That l'chayr is okay. That l'chayr would not be a problem of Makom Mechira site. That's basically I'm staying in this hotel. But once again, you're going to get into gray areas in different hotels, different establishments, what's considered the Makom Mechira site and what is not. Let me ask you a question. What about on an airplane? Could I get a beer by my seat? So I think in an airplane, my seat is that's base site. This is my spot. This is this is where I'm staying for the next 10 hours on this flight. Is this chair? This is my spot. Yeah, they're giving out beers, but I'm not a Makom Mechira site. I think that is okay. Let me ask you a question that's very similar, but I think the halach is different. Lu Yitzhar was mutter to go to a sports game. Yeah, so you're at the basketball game. Baseball game. Yeah, with the Yankee cat with the pears sticking out, and they won't even know I'm Jewish. Good, great. Blue Jays, yeah. You'll be in Yankee Stadium, a bleacher creature, as they used to call it. Yeah, and with all the fine, upstanding citizens who usually hang out there, probably wearing their suits and ties. Right, that's how they still do it with the hats, right? They still wear hats. Okay, so you're sitting there, and the question is, could you buy a beer? If you're Sephardi, could the Sephardi buy a beer? I think l'chayr not. That already you're buying it b'makom mechira site. The guy's going around beer here, and you go and you buy the beer in the matzah where they're selling the beers. L'chayr for a Sephardi, that's a problem to buy. Now you might want to ask, what's the difference between the airplane seat and the seat by the baseball game? So it's very fine. This is definitely debatable, but I think my airplane seat, that's my seat. That's where I'm staying. Whereas by the baseball game, I'm hanging out in the Makom Mechira site of selling beer. Yes, it's true. It's my seat, and I have a ticket for that seat. But the ikar isn't like, I'm owning this seat. This is my seat for the day. I'm at the game.
Do you book a seat? Do you have a...
Yes, even you have it. Actually, the bleachers, you didn't. So the bleacher creatures wasn't a good example. But a regular seat, you booked a seat. So if you book a seat, then even so, that's just where you're going to sit. But you're at the matzav. You're at the game. I think so. But once again, if you want to argue with this, you could. This is definitely debatable. I'm making a fine chiluk, but that's how I see it.
Does it make a difference if you're not buying the drink on the airplane, they're giving it to you? It's not a mechira?
So chayra, it is a mechira, even if they're giving it to you. It's just that it's included in the prepaid price. Chayra. And we saw by the neighbor, the poskim didn't care if you weren't buying the beer from your neighbor, your guy's neighbor. They held that as a problem, where the guy gives you the beer. So, okay, now let's go weiter. So, the later Shulchan Aruch says that when it comes to apple juice or pomegranate juice, that's not a problem. Why? Because those are drinks we weren't geyser on these uncommon drinks. Okay, so which drinks are included? Because we have a gap between beer, yes, apple juice and pomegranate juice, no. What's included? Where do we draw the line? So the Pashas of the Shulchan Aruch seemingly is any chashuv drink that's normal. Because the whole reason that rimon juice and apple juice, pomegranate juice and apple juice didn't count is because those weren't regular. That seems to apply in any regular chashuv drink would be a problem. And that's the Pashas of the Shulchan Aruch. That's how the Aruch HaShulchan goes. As the Aruch HaShulchan points out, coffee, problem. So the Aruch HaShulchan holds for a Sephardi to have coffee in a place where they sell coffee, in Starbucks, problem. Now, let's see if everybody holds that. The Halachos Ketane says, no, it's only alcoholic drinks. The and he got mussar for it. Yeah. There was a lot of Gedolim that weren't happy with it. Fine. The Pri Chodesh says that the Gezerah only applies to beer. My understanding is that the accepted minhag amongst the Sfaradim is only alcohol. So the beer, you want to have the coffee in the makom where they sell the coffee, where the goyim sell the coffee, that would be okay. But you want to have alcohol where the goyim sell alcohol, that is a problem for the Sfaradim, not only beer, but any alcohol. Okay, now back to the Ashkenazim. So pretty much, there's one of these Shmak sugyas, like the gambling sugya. Okay, the Sfaradim, you guys have all sorts of problems. Ashkenazim, we could do what we want. Gishmak. Not so simple. Okay, but we'll see. Not so bad either. The Chachmas Adam says that a Baal Nefesh should be machmir not to have a beer with a goy or the place of the goyim. The Radbaz and the Shvius Yaakov says you can't drink at a bar. The Yavitz says that no drinking in bars. But I think they say the coffee houses he was okay with, but bars he had a problem. The Shla says we're machmer like the Mechaber. The Shla says Ashkenazim, we're machmer like the Mechaber, and we don't have beer by the places where the goyim sell. The Sma says by the headsman called the Vad Arba Artzis. It was a get together of Rabbanim, and they made all sorts of gezeras. So he says there were geyser there that anybody that sits down and drinks at a bar, he cannot be called a Rav, he cannot be called a Chaver, and he cannot have a position like a Gabbai or something like that if he if he sits and drinks at bars. The Lemaisa, so how do we come out? Lemaisa, the way that we come out is, for Sfaradim it's a real problem. For Ashkenazim, there's definitely room to be machmer. There's some places that are machmer, but the Ikar Adin is surely that it is mutter for the Ashkenazi to have beer by that bar, to have beer by the Goyish neighbor, to have beer by the sports game Liutzor they were able to go, and exactly, yeah. Okay, now let's go on to the next chilek of the sugya. Does beer need a hechsher? So beer is a very basic product. Beer basically has 4 ingredients. It has water, water, barley usually, hops, and yeast. And those 4 ingredients are generally issue free. They're generally clear and cut. And therefore, historically, beer never had a hechsher, because who needs a hechsher on something that is so basic? Now, recently, in the last bunch of years, beer started getting hechsherim, and it's a good thing, because, we still, who knows what could get mixed in, and therefore it is a positive. Now, to go further, let's talk about something for a second. Yeah, these guys have a hechsher. I don't think they do it. In America, most beers still don't have a hechsher. But in Eretz Yisrael, I think they all got it already, pretty much. And in America, they started getting. Now, there are certain beers which are problematic. So some beers are problematic because they have the flavored beers. The flavored beers no longer have this rule of just 4 ingredients. They have all sorts of ingredients in there. So those could be a problem. There's also the stout beers. The stout beers, they can often have milchiks in there to create the foam. Now, they don't go so well with the chont. You know what I'm saying? So you got to be careful. And they're chalav stam. So therefore, that is... Oh. So that is a issue with the stout beers. There's also another thing that's become much more popular in recent years. They've always had it, but in the last 10 years or so, they've tremendously gained in popularity, and that is the craft beers, the mini breweries, the mom and pop breweries. Yeah? So these guys, a lot of them like doing all these wild, out there types of things, and they put in all these random, interesting fruit and one of them I heard put in pepperoni, another one putting in oyster, and all sorts of random different. I'm sure there's some with grapes, yain nesach in there, and they're putting in all sorts of stuff to try to sound interesting. Now it happens to be the high majority of the craft beers are still the four basic main ingredients, and they are okay, but there's definitely other stuff going on. So like this, what beers Lamaisa could I drink and what beers could I not drink? So let's get started. The best is, if you have a hechsher, listen, that's the best. Now what if I don't have a hechsher and it's not a flavored beer? It's a regular classic beer. So if it is, so the regular beers which are, let's say craft beers, and they're not flavored and they don't have any of these funky stuff, they're usually okay. The problem is for kalim. Meaning, what other runs did they do in that brewery? And what else are they doing with that same steam that they use to make the beers? What else is going on with that steam? You don't actually know. Now, it's probably okay, but you don't know. Now, if you go for one of the national brands or international brands, you go for your Budweiser, or you go for your Heineken, or you go for your Corona. Now, these beers are going to be fine. Why? Because they're going to use the four major ingredients. There's no way that on the Corona run they did something else. That run is busy making Corona 24/7. They have they need the capacity. It's not a sheer line where they're going to make Corona. It's going to just be making Corona, and therefore there's nothing to really worry about. That Corona is going to be good. Where it's going to get a little bit more complicated is those craft beers where they have one little mini brewery and they make 6 different types of beers there. Just because this one looks okay doesn't mean that the next one isn't the grape flavored one, which is going to be a yain nesach problem, a stam yainin problem. So therefore, here's how we come out. Hechsher, best. National or international brand, big brand, which is non-flavored beer, it's very acceptable. A next level is a smaller brewery, which is a basic type. Mesa, it's really statistically, it's probably fine. Is there a chance that there's something wrong? There's a chance of something wrong, but the high likelihood is it's fine. Lemaisa, one should probably stay away from it if it doesn't have a hechsher. In America, they're getting hechshers right and left, these small breweries. So to have a small brewery without a hechsher, it's not so geschmack. The ones that are flavored, there you mamish have to stay away. And obviously the craft ones with strange flavors that you for sure have to stay away from. Okay, and that is the basics in beer. Next topic. Is anybody here ever heard of Trappist beer? Good. Baruch Hashem, you guys didn't hear of it. So I thought Bentzi would at least have heard of Trappist beer. Okay. So Trappist beer is a very chashuv type of beer that the beer drinkers, the mumchim are very into. It's made, I'm not making this stuff up, it's made in a monastery by a monk. To have a din of Trappist beer, you have to follow their klolim. They have a whole list of klolim made by a monk, ba'atzmo, and in a monastery, and the money that comes benefits the monastery. So, is that okay? Could you have such a beer? So, and it also becomes like a tourist attraction. People visit these places and buy their beers, and they're meant to be super top quality, and they have Messiah from their Alta Avodah Zarnik and whatever. Yeah. So, is that okay? So, Lamaisa, klape the ingredients, Shabai, it's kosher. These guys are very strict to their Messiah, and it's kosher ingredients. This stuff is kosher. That's number one. Number two is, could I buy from them? Or am I supporting Avodah Zarah by buying from them? So if I'm going to go on my vacation to Belgium and I'm passing by the monastery, I know I'm not going to go in, but outside they have a shop where they're selling. Hey, that would be cool. Should we buy one of those beers? That's a problem because you are directly supporting the monastery. Could I go to my supermarket in America and go and buy that beer? So that, from a pure halachic standpoint, there's no problem. I'm not supporting the monastery. I'm supporting ShopRite, the retailer. I'm supporting Al's Liquor and Spirits.
They are buying it from the
So when you buy your one beer from Al's Liquor and Spirits, the monastery sold it to the importer. The importer then sold it to the distributor. The distributor then sold it to the retailer. You go and buy your one beer from the retailer, it's going to have zero effect back on the monastery. Maybe if you have your store in Lakewood and you want to buy 1,000 bottles of the beer from the distributor, maybe that's going to end up having a rollover effect to the monastery itself. But when you go and you buy your one beer, it's not having any effect to the monastery. And therefore, there's no Isser Klape of that. I'm just it's business. That's not how it works. So your one beer doesn't translate into anything. And therefore, that would not be an issue. However, there's a concept of Tumtum Halev. This stuff is Tumah in a bottle. This is like, the whole chap of this stuff is Tumah. I think this is something that this is stuff we got to stay away from, because this is mamish Tumah in a bottle. But halachically, you got to say this is fine. Buying it from the monastery is a problem, but buying it Shulchan Aruch, I think you're okay. But this stuff is tumah in a bottle, and I think we got to stay far away. But I can't get you halachically, but ashkafically, I think we got problems.
But you already a lot of discussion about when they're doing avodah zorah in any given monastery nowadays, some Christian monastery.
Well, you're chayshish that there's the concept of yain nesach. We never heard of sheker nesach. Like they don't pour the grape juice. We don't have a chashash that it's for avodah zarah. No, we don't have such a chashash. That sounds mitzias apparently. There's a big fat guy with a cross who's sitting there and making it.
So he's asking why we're supporting avodah zarah. He says avodah zarah in the church or whatever.
Well, the Maisa, as we know, Rabbeinu Tam says it's not avodah zarah. The Rambam says it is avodah zarah. Moshe Shona should say it is avodah zarah. The Maisa we stick away. We treat it as avodah zarah. The Maisa. That's Christianity at large, and I have a feeling these monk chevra are worse. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I have a feeling they're worse. They seem worse. Well, maybe we'll ask Benzi. He'll explain to us the chilukim, but I don't know. They seem worse. They look worse to me.
Even though they're definitely not doing anything religious, but they're brewing
Correct.
beer to sell.
Correct. But listen, these guys are putting their klipas onto that beer. You know what I'm saying? Fine. Weiter. So let's just sum up over here. So there's a concept called, running out of time. We'll skip that. Fine, let's do it like this. There's Shmuel Bar Bisna. He came to this Gemara. Same Gemara continues. Shmuel Bar Bisna came to a place where they were choshid on stam yainim, and they gave him a cup of wine, kosher wine. He didn't drink it. They said, "Okay, fine, we'll give you a beer." They gave him a beer. He didn't drink it. So Gemara says, "Bishlam of the wine. I understand why he didn't do it. Shimsa. It's connected to chashad of yayin nesach. But the beer, what's wrong with beer? Beer is shimsa the shimsa. Answers the Gemara, shimsa the shimsa. You start with, they say, drink the beer. Before you know it, they'll drink the wine, and then drink the good wine. You'll end up drinking the bad wine, and therefore you have to stay away. Now, if you look at the Gemara, it seems to me like a story of a tzaddik who was Pirish. But however, the nice in the Shulchan Aruch, it says, Malkum Yisrael Noigim Kula B'Yayin Shel Goyim Ta'afashecha Asar. In a place where there's Yidden that are being makel by Stam Yainin, even the beer is Asar. Zak the Taz. We're not talking about a place where the people are chalaini. We're not talking about a place where the people just don't care altogether. Because don't care altogether, they're not learning from you. They do whatever they want anyways. We're talking about where there's from people that aren't makbid on stam yainim. There you can't have the beer. Is it only beer? Is that the chasam sefer? You can't have coffee, even black coffee, by the coffee shops. Why? Because first of all, it says you can't say stam klina in a ben yoyma by a coffee shop. Secondly, the Chasam Sofer says that even if you have your kalim that you drink it out of a cup that was only used for black coffee, the other guys are going to end up drinking. They're going to see you drinking there, and they're going to end up drinking the coffee with the milk, which is for sure a problem. And therefore, based on this Gemara, you can't even drink black coffee because you're going to end up having coffee with milk. Rabbi say, I have a question for you. I know what happens in America. I don't know if this is what happens in England and South Africa. The Olim drinks at Starbucks. Yeah, the Olim drinks at Starbucks. Do they only drink like black coffee at Starbucks? Or is the Olim having frappuccinos and refreshers, which is the ice drinks? So, we know what we're talking about here? Baruch Hashem don't. Okay, very good. So I'll tell you the Metzias. done a little research in this. There's definitely from people going into the Starbucks and having refreshers, which is their ice drinks and whatever. Now, the refreshers, what's the base for a refresher? Just the shtickle goyish white grape juice, what we call stam yainim. Usser, not kosher, according to all the poskim that ever lived and ever will live. So, and are people drinking it right and left? Yeah. Are people drinking frappuccinos? Yeah, because the glass one that's bottled is kosher, and the one that they make at the store is not kosher. So, are people having hot chocolate, not kosher? Yeah. So I heard from Rav Kalis, that Rav Kalis, you can't go to Starbucks in a frum area and order a black coffee, because this is this thin. You can't have the beer when people are aren't being makbid on the stam yoinim from people. You go to Starbucks on Rockaway Turnpike in the Five Towns, and you want to go and order a black coffee, you're gonna have a problem because it's this din. Then people are makbid. First of all, they're not makbid on the frappuccinos, and they're not makbid on the stam yoinim of the refreshers, and therefore it's a problem. He passes it's actually a problem. However, if you're going to go to a place that's not a place of from Yidden, you're traveling, you're by the airport, you're out there somewhere. You want to have Starbucks, could you have Starbucks? So I heard from Fishbone that he did a tremendous amount of research. At that Starbucks, you could have, assuming you're, we'll talk about for those of Makbid and Chalav Yisrael, you could have a Americano, no shaylas in Americano. You could have an ice Americano, no shaylas in that. And you could have an ice latte. That no shilos whatsoever that you could have in those places, and if you're not makbid on Chalav Yisrael, you can have those with milk. Now, everything else, because the way that they mix the kelim is a big shayla. However, interestingly enough, Dunkin' Donuts or Dunkin', I think they rebranded themselves. There, they have much better processes. They wash everything less than Yad Slezbai. They're not so fancy, so they don't have stam yainim in their ice drinks. And the base products of all the normal stuff are kosher. The bacon is not kosher, but all the regular stuff is pretty much kosher. And therefore, you're much better off having your coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. But you know where you're better off than Dunkin' Donuts? By the From Kosher place. So if you're in a place that has a From Kosher place, please go to the From Kosher place. If you're at a place that doesn't have a From Kosher place, go to Dunkin'. And if there is no Dunkin', you're better off at the mom and pop shop. No mom and pop shop, you go to Starbucks and get but you got to know what to order. But in a place where the Jews are all ordering the bad stuff, then l'chayr you should stay away from there and not order, and that l'chayr would fit into this din of the Shulchan Aruch. Thank you for listening. Okay, so could we potentially save Starbucks, or is it lights out, game over? As Rav Kalis said, it's the Shulchan Aruch that we have a problem. So there is a chiddush being said, which is debatable. Once again, the Chassam Sofer extended the din of the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch was talking about you can't drink beer in a place where they're not makbid on stam yainim. The Chassam Sofer extended that to you can't drink black coffee in a place where they're not makbid on cholav akum, which is totally unrelated. So through the Chassam Sofer, Starbucks would for sure be aser. But not everybody necessarily agrees with the Chassam Sofer that you could extend it. Now, there were two drinks. It was beer because of stam yainim. But when it comes to Starbucks, you have two things. First of all, you have two drinks which are even more closely related than beer and wine. You cannot drink the kosher coffee because people might come to drink the non-kosher coffee. Now, you could argue that there's a kal v'chomer that if you're going to go from beer to wine, you're for sure going to go from coffee to coffee. But on the other hand, it is different items. But you could also maybe prove that maybe Rav Kalis surely is right, because Starbucks, we're actually talking about stam yainim. We're talking about the thing that the actual Gezerah was worried about. So who cares if I go from beer to stam yainim or I go from coffee to stam yainim? So the chayra, you could say that it's a problem. However, one may argue with Rav Kalis and say, listen, I only have what is written in the Gemara, and I don't have a license to extend a chiddush. The spirit of the law is for sure to aser Starbucks in town. Starbucks is from people. However, one can argue that the actual gezerah doesn't apply. The Ma'aseh of Kal says it applies. You could potentially say it applies with a kal v'chomer. I would stay away, but the Ma'aseh, there is at least a tzad to say that the gezerah of this Shulchan Aruch does not apply to Starbucks. So there is what to debate. There's another din, which seemingly does not have a Gemara. The Rambam in Halachos of Beer, Perik Yud Zayin Halacha Yud, says the Chachamim asered without a makar in the Torah drinking with goyim by a mesiba shel goyim. There's an isser of drinking by a mesiba shel goyim, even though seemingly there is no makar in the Torah. And I'll tell you the truth, we seemingly don't even have a Gemara. Everyone can figure out where is the Rambam's makar from this. His best makar seems to be the Gemaras that we already quoted, but the Gemaras that we already quoted don't seem to ever really say that there's an isser of mesiba shel goyim. But Lamaisa, this is what the Rambam says. The Torah brings this down, brings this in. It's also to drink. It's also to drink beer and a mesiba shel goyim. You can't drink and a mesiba shel goyim. The Shulchan Aruch, however, does not bring this down. It does not make it to the Shulchan Aruch. However, the Bach, the Pri Chodesh, the Darchei Tshuva, and the Aruch HaShulchan all bring this Isser down. The Chassam Sofer as well. They all bring this Isser down that you're not allowed to drink by a mesiba shel goyim. Now, Roiv, what's mesiba shel goyim? Anywhere where there's Roiv goyim, that is mesiba shel. That's shel goyim. I'm not saying mesiba, but Roiv goyim is shel goyim. If there's 101 yidden and 100 goyim, then that would be a fine that would not be considered a mesiba shel goyim. Now, what is mesiba exactly? So this is very hard to qualify. What exactly is a mesiba? I don't know what counts as a mesiba. When I say every business meeting is a mesiba, l'chayra not. L'chayra if it's business oriented, l'chayra it's not a mesiba. So it's going to be the company holiday party, that l'chayra is a mesiba. So the office party, that's a mesiba. When a networking event, is that a mesiba? I don't know. My Svar Rishon would say no, but I don't really have a strong raya one way or the other. There's a case that they asked her, Moshe, could they have a parlor meeting by the house of some guy, probably a rich guy? Could they have a parlor meeting for the yeshiva or for whatever it was for? And Ramosha said, no, they can't. That would be mesiba shel goyim, and you can't go and have a parlor meeting in the house of a guy. Now, I don't know if we could draw a proof. I know some people want to, but I don't know if we could draw a proof from the Ramosha that even a boring parlor meeting could be considered a mesiba shel goyim. It could be Ramosha felt, it's not what a Jewish institution does, goes and makes a party in the house of the guy. So, I don't know. I don't know if we could prove it from there. I don't know what type of parlor meeting it was. So I'm going to leave this part as a little sarach in, because I don't really know what qualifies as mesiba shel goyim. What type of drinks are we talking about? So the pashtus is anything alcoholic is probably what the Isser is talking about. The Chassam Sofer says the Isser applies even to coffee. The Aruch HaShulchan says even to food. But here's going to be a big saver. The Pri Chodesh says that if you're at your own table, then it's okay. Now, often in the office, when you have to go to the company holiday party, or you have to go to, the boss's kid's wedding or something like that, often they'll put all the front people together on a table where they're going to serve kosher food or whatever it is, and you're going to be on the Jewish table, so to speak. If that's the case, then the chayra, you're going to be okay based on this Pri Chodesh, and I think the minhag is that people are rely on this Pri Chodesh. Obviously, if you get out of these things, it's better to get out of these things. But if not, the minhag seems to be that we do rely on this Pri Chodesh. One more final shayla that we're going to discuss with beer. Is beer ishu bishul akam? So the chayr not. The Gemara seems to be clear. A papa would take beer from the goyim and bring it out of the store and drink it. So the chayr, there's no issue of bishul akam. The question is why. So one option is perhaps it's not Oilel Shulchan Malacha. Now, is that true nowadays? Beer is a little bit of an interesting drink. Because on one hand, beer is like, if you're more like a chill type fellow, you go out with a friend, you have a beer, you come to your house, you have a beer, it's relaxed, it's nice, it's chashuv. Some weddings will have it, some weddings won't have it. Some people view beer as a low-class concept, and some people don't. So it's a little bit tricky to decide whether it's Oilel Shulchan Malachim or not. I think l'chayr it is Oilel Shulchan Malachim, but you could hear somebody else, beer is for lowlives. So some people think that, and for them, their in their viewpoint, it wouldn't be. So it's a little bit hard to place. But I think it is considered a chashuv idea, but there is what to debate. Another possibility why it's not bishul akum is perhaps it's bottled to the water, just like we make a shahakal on it, and it's bottled to the water. So perhaps it's bottled to the water. Water could be drinking raw, and therefore bishul akum doesn't apply. Another possible shita is that it's the type of thing that it's the type of thing that it's a drink, and there's a tzad to say that there's no bishul akum on drinks. Even though this isn't, I would want to call it the majority opinion, but there are such shitas out there that there's no bishul on drinks. So the Maisa, there's multiple potential reasons why there's no bishul akum. It seems to be clear from the Gemara that there's no bishul akum on beer. It's not so clear what the reasoning is. As Rav Yashiv says, even though each raya by itself is not a strong raya, but the Maisa we rely on it because the minhag is that we say no bishul akum by beer, so too by coffee, by the way, as well. A very similar concept. We say no bishul akum by coffee, even though the svaras aren't so clear as to why, and that is the sugya.